The transport ship shuddered as it docked with the massive space station. Hanna pressed her face against the small window and stared at the metal structure that stretched beyond her vision. The Galactic Academy was bigger than any city she had ever seen on Earth. Lights blinked along its surface like stars, and ships moved around it like tiny insects. "First time seeing it?" asked Kim Doyen from the seat next to her. His voice was quiet, almost nervous. Like Hanna, he was 19 years old and from Seoul. Unlike her, he looked scared. "Yes," Hanna said. She felt excited more than scared. After years of training in martial arts back home, she was finally going to learn how to fight alongside aliens from across the galaxy. Her instructors in Seoul had told her she was good. Now she would find out if Earth training meant anything out. "Here!" The ship's speakers crackled to life. "All human cadets prepare for departure. Welcome to the Galactic Academy. Try not to embarrass your species." The voice belonged to their transport pilot, a tall blue alien with 4 arms. He had made it clear during the 3-day journey that he thought humans were a waste of space. Most aliens felt that way, Hanna had learned. They called humans Deathworlders, like it was an insult. 50 human cadets stood up and gathered their bags. Hanna looked around at her fellow humans. They came from all over Earth: America, Europe, Africa, Asia. The Academy only accepted the best from each planet, and Earth's quota was tiny compared to older species in the galaxy. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cool air rushed in, carrying strange smells that Hanna could not identify. The gravity felt different too, lighter than Earth's heavy pull. She had to be careful not to bounce when she walked. They stepped into a huge hall filled with aliens. Hanna had seen pictures and videos, but being surrounded by real alien beings was different. Some looked almost human, but with extra eyes or different colored skin. Others were so strange she could not tell which end was their head. A group of crystal beings stood near one wall, their bodies catching the light like diamonds. Their movements were slow and careful, as if they were afraid of breaking. Near them, cloudy shapes that might have been ghosts floated above the ground. They pulsed with soft light and whispered to each other in voices like wind. "Stay together," said Park Min-ho, the oldest human in their group at 21. He had served in Earth's military before coming here. "Do not stare too much. Some species consider it rude." But it was hard not to stare. A group of aliens with 6 arms each were juggling balls of fire between their hands. Another species looked like walking trees, their bark-like skin creaking as they moved. Some aliens were so big they had to duck under doorways, while others were small enough to sit on Hanna's shoulder. All of them stopped talking when the humans walked by. The aliens stared at them with curiosity, amusement, or disgust. Hanna heard whispers in languages she did not understand, but the tone was clear enough. These aliens thought humans were primitive, weak, and out of place. "Deathworlders," one alien said loud enough for everyone to hear. It looked like a giant cat walking on 2 legs, with fur that changed colors as it spoke. "I wonder how long they will last?" Other aliens laughed. The sound was not friendly. A loud voice boomed across the hall. "All new cadets report to Training Hall 7 for orientation. Move quickly. The Academy does not wait for slow species." The crowd began moving toward a set of large doors. Hanna found herself walking next to an alien that looked like a person, made of blue energy. It flickered and sparked as it moved, and she could see through its body to the wall behind it. "You are from the Deathworld, yes?" the energy being asked. Its voice sounded like electricity crackling. "I am Nex Thuval of the Etherian Empire. My family has served in the galactic military for 1,000 years. I am Hanna from Earth," she replied politely. "Nice to meet you." Nex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Earth. Yes, I have heard stories. Your planet tries to kill you every day, so you never learned proper civilization. No wonder you still fight with your hands like animals." Hana felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. We learned what we needed to survive. Survive, yes. But can you fight real warriors? That is what we will discover here. Nex's energy form pulsed brighter. I look forward to showing you the difference between a Deathworld savage and a true soldier. They entered Training Hall 7, a space so large that Hana could barely see the far wall. The floor was covered. In soft mats and weapons of every kind hung on the walls. Some looked familiar, like swords and spears. Others were clearly alien technology that glowed or hummed with power. At the center of the hall stood the largest alien Hana had seen yet. It was twice as tall as a human, with green scales covering its body and yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. When it spoke, its voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. I am Instructor Kale Vorthak, it said. For the next 4 years you belong to me. I will teach you to fight, to think, and to lead. Most of you will fail. Some of you will die. The galaxy has no use for the weak. The instructor's eyes swept across the crowd of cadets from dozens of different species. When his gaze fell on the humans, his expression did not change, but Hana felt like he was measuring them for coffins. The Academy exists for one purpose. Vorthak continued. To create soldiers who can protect the galaxy from threats that would destroy entire worlds. You come from different planets, different cultures, different ways of thinking. Here you will learn that strength comes from adversity, and unity comes from competition. He gestured to assistants who began setting up equipment around the hall. Your first test begins now. Hand-to-hand combat assessment. No weapons, no technology, no help from your species' natural advantages. Just you and your opponent. Excited murmurs ran through the crowd. Some aliens looked confident, others worried. The humans clustered together, suddenly looking very small and young. The matches will be random, Vorthak announced. When I call your name, step forward and show me what your world taught you about fighting. Hana felt her heart beating faster. This was it, her first real test against galactic-level opponents. Around her, aliens began bragging about their species' advantages and making bets on who would win each match. She closed her eyes and remembered her training back in Seoul. Thousands of hours on the mats, learning to fall, learning to throw, learning to use an opponent's strength against them. Her instructors had always said that technique could beat raw power. Now she would find out if they were right. The combat assessments began with a series of matches that showed off the incredible diversity of galactic species. Hana watched from the sidelines as aliens demonstrated abilities that seemed impossible. A crystalline Vexari cadet stepped onto the mat first. Its body looked like it was carved from blue diamond, with sharp edges and surfaces that reflected the hall's lights. Its opponent was a furry alien that reminded Hana of a bear, but with 6 arms and claws as long as kitchen knives. The bear alien charged forward with surprising speed, all 6 arms swinging. But when its claws struck the Vexari's crystal skin, they made a ringing sound, like hitting a bell. The crystal being did not even flinch. It simply reached out with one hand and tapped its opponent on the chest. The bear alien flew backward 10 feet and crashed into the wall. It slid down and did not get up. Vexari physiology, Kim Do-yoon whispered to Hana. Their bones are literally made of diamond. They can hit like a hammer and take damage that would kill most species. Next came a match between 2 aliens that moved so fast Hana could barely follow them. They looked like humans, but with silver skin and extra joints in their arms and legs. They darted around each other like lightning, striking and blocking dozens of times per second. The match ended when one of them made a mistake so small that Hana missed it entirely. Suddenly, one silver alien was on the ground while the other stood over it, not even breathing hard. Kethlar reflexes, Park Min-ho explained. They evolved on a world where everything moves fast. Their nervous systems work 10 times faster than ours. A floating gas cloud faced off against a rock-like alien that moved by rolling instead of walking. The gas cloud kept changing shape to avoid attacks, while the rock alien just absorbed every hit without damage. The match went on for 20 minutes before Instructor Vorthak called it a draw. Hana began to understand why aliens looked down on humans. Every species seemed to have some natural advantage: diamond skin, lightning reflexes, the ability to phase through attacks, strength that could crush metal. What did humans have? They were not the strongest, fastest, or toughest. They could not fly, change shape, or shoot energy beams. "Lee Hannah!" Instructor Vorthak's voice boomed across the hall. Her stomach dropped. Around her, the other humans offered encouraging words, but she could see the worry in their eyes. They all knew this first match would set the tone for how humans were treated for the rest of their time at the academy. She walked to the center of the mat, trying to keep her breathing steady. The alien cadets formed a circle around the fighting area, their voices dropping to excited whispers. She heard the word Deathworlder several times, usually followed by laughter. "Your opponent," Vorthak announced, "Next Thuval of the Etherian Empire." The energy being she had met earlier floated onto the mat. Up close, his body was even more impressive. He looked like a person made of blue lightning, constantly shifting and sparking. When he moved, trails of light followed his hands and feet. "This will be educational," Nex said, his electric voice carrying clearly across the hall. "Let me show these primitives what real power looks like." The other alien cadets cheered. Some were already making bets on how quickly the match would end. Hana noticed that none of them were betting on her. Instructor Vorthak raised his hand. "Combat assessment rules. No killing, no permanent injury. Match ends when one fighter yields or cannot continue. Use of species advantages is permitted." Hana felt a chill run down her spine. Species advantages were permitted. That meant Nex could use his energy form's special abilities: speed, intangibility, energy attacks. She had nothing but her training and her human body. She dropped into a fighting stance her instructors in Seoul had drilled into her thousands of times. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, hands ready to grab or strike. It was a basic judo position, designed for balance and quick movement. Nex's energy form pulsed brighter. "Look at the little Deathworlder trying to look dangerous. How adorable!" More laughter from the crowd. Hana ignored it and focused on her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Stay calm, stay ready, watch for opportunities. "The thing about you energy beings," she said quietly, just loud enough for Nex to hear, "is that you still have to obey physics when you solidify to attack." Nex's flickering form paused for just a moment. "What did you say?" "I said you have to become solid to hit me, and when you do, you are just as vulnerable as anyone else." "Ignorant savage," Nex snarled. "I will teach you respect." Instructor Vorthak looked between them, already reaching for the whistle around his neck. From his expression, he expected this to be over very quickly. "Begin," he commanded. Nex immediately solidified his energy form and launched himself forward. The transformation was incredible. One moment he was flickering light, the next he was solid as stone and moving with supernatural speed. Energy crackled around his fists as he aimed a devastating punch at Hana's head. It was the same attack that had worked against his previous 3 opponents. Most aliens tried to block or dodge backward when faced with such overwhelming speed and power. They failed because they could not match an Etherian's velocity. But Hana did not try to block or dodge backward. Instead, she stepped forward into his attack. The movement went against every instinct that most species had. When something dangerous came at you, you backed away from it. You did not move closer. But human martial arts were built on a different philosophy. Use the opponent's strength and momentum against them. As Nex's punch came toward her face, Hana's left hand shot up and caught his wrist. Her right hand grabbed his upper arm near the shoulder. His own speed and power carried him forward into her grip. The moment his feet left the ground, Nex realized he had made a terrible mistake. He was no longer in control of the fight. Hana pivoted on her right foot, pulling down hard, on his wrist while driving her shoulder into his center of mass. It was a textbook Seoi Nage, a shoulder throw that every judo student learned in their first year. But Nex had never experienced anything like it. Etherians evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal physical conflict. They fought with energy and technology, not grappling. His species had never developed defenses against close-quarters combat techniques. The throw happened so fast that several alien cadets missed it entirely. One moment, Nex was attacking with the confident speed of a superior species. The next moment, he was flying through the air in a graceful arc, his energy form crackling and sparking as he lost concentration. He hit the mat with a sound like thunder. The impact disrupted his energy matrix, causing brilliant flashes of light to dance across his body. When the lights faded, he was lying on his back, gasping and flickering weakly. The training hall fell completely silent. Instructor Vorthak's hand froze halfway to his whistle. In 30 years of training cadets from across the galaxy, he had never seen a first-year student defeat an Etherian noble in single combat. He stared at the small human girl who was already helping her opponent to his feet. Hana offered Nex a respectful bow, a gesture of honor that her martial arts training had taught her to show toward every opponent, win or lose. The act of respect toward a defeated enemy was completely alien to most galactic cultures. Around the mat, hundreds of alien cadets stood in shocked silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The Deathworld girl had not just won. She had made it look easy. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Hundreds of alien cadets stared at the mat where Nex Thuval lay flickering weakly, his energy form struggling to maintain coherence. None of them moved. None of them spoke. The only sound in the massive training hall was Nex's labored breathing as he tried to reform his energy matrix. Hana stood over him, one hand extended to help him up. Her face was calm, showing no sign of victory or pride. To her, this was just another sparring match like the thousands she had done back in Seoul. But to everyone watching, it was impossible. Etherians were one of the founding species of the Galactic Coalition. They were ancient, powerful, and nearly untouchable in personal combat. Their energy forms gave them speed and strength that most species could not match. Nex Thuval was not just any Etherian, he was nobility, trained from childhood in the finest combat techniques his species had developed over millennia, and a human girl had just thrown him across the mat like he was a beginner. Instructor Vorthak's yellow eyes blinked slowly as if he was trying to wake up from a dream. His hand still held the whistle halfway to his lips, forgotten in his shock. He had seen the attack coming, had expected to blow the whistle within seconds to stop what should have been a massacre. Instead, he had witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about combat, about species advantages, and about humans. Kim Doyen and Park Minho exchanged amazed glances from the human section. They had known Hana was skilled. She had been training in martial arts since she was 5 years old and had won championships across Seoul's competitive fighting scene. But seeing her techniques work against galactic-level opponents was a revelation. How? Whispered a crystalline Vexari cadet near the front of the crowd. Its diamond body rang like a bell when it spoke. How did the Deathworlder move so fast? She did not move fast, replied a 6-armed Kethlar, its silver skin shimmering with confusion. She moved smart. She used his speed against him. Other aliens began talking in hushed voices, trying to understand what they had seen. Some replayed the moment in their minds, breaking down each movement. Others simply stared at Hana like she was some kind of magical creature. Nex finally managed to stabilize his energy form enough to sit up. His blue light was dim and flickering, like a candle in the wind. When Hana offered her hand again, he stared at it for a long moment before accepting her help. "That was," he started to say, then stopped. His electric voice was quieter now, less arrogant. "That was not supposed to happen." "You fought well," Hana said simply. It was what her instructors had taught her to say after every match, win or lose. "Thank you for the learning experience." Nex's energy form pulsed brighter for a moment, almost like he was blushing. No one had ever thanked him for losing before. In Etherian culture, defeat was shameful, something to be hidden or forgotten. But this human spoke like the match had been a gift they shared. "I do not understand," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "You are from a death world. Your species has no natural advantages. You should not have been able to touch me, let alone defeat me." Hana considered his words carefully. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, waiting for her answer. What she said now might determine how humans were treated for years to come. "You are right," she said finally. "Earth is a hard world. It tries to kill us every day with storms, earthquakes, diseases, predators, and 100 other dangers. We are not the strongest or fastest species. We cannot fly or shoot energy or phase through walls." She paused, looking around at the alien, faces surrounding them. Some showed curiosity, others confusion, a few showed the beginning of respect. But because our world is so dangerous, we learned something that peaceful species might not understand. We learned that size and strength and natural advantages do not always win fights. Sometimes the person who wins is the one who understands how to use what they have against what their opponent has. A huge alien that looked like a walking tree creaked forward. Its bark-like skin rustled as it spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. "You speak of technique over power. This is interesting. Most species rely on their natural gifts." "On Earth we have a saying," Hana continued. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall. It means that sometimes having advantages can make you overconfident. It can make you forget that your opponent might know something you do not." Nex struggled to his feet, his energy form now stable but still dim. "I have trained for 15 years in Etherian combat techniques. I have defeated warriors from a dozen species. How could your primitive world teach you something that our advanced civilization missed?" Hana smiled sadly. "Because your civilization is advanced. Your people do not spend their lives learning to hurt each other with their bare hands. You have better things to do, but humans, we come from a world where everything is trying to kill us. So we got very, very good at fighting back." The truth of her words settled over the crowd like a weight. These aliens came from worlds with advanced technology, peaceful societies, and civilized ways of solving problems. They learned combat as a skill, like mathematics or history. Humans learned combat as survival. It was written into their bones by millions of years of evolution on a world that showed no mercy to the weak. Instructor Vorthak finally lowered his whistle. His scaled face showed an expression that might have been thoughtfulness or concern, or both. "Interesting," he rumbled in his deep voice. "Very interesting indeed." He looked around at the assembled cadets, his yellow eyes taking in their shocked faces and nervous whispers. "It seems," he continued, "that our assessment protocols may need to be updated. We have been measuring physical advantages and natural abilities. Perhaps we should also measure adaptability, technique, and the kind of creativity that comes from survival pressure." A ripple of unease went through the alien cadets. They had come to the academy confident in their species' advantages, expecting to compete on familiar terms. Now a human had just proven that all their assumptions might be wrong. "The next match will begin in 5 minutes, Vorthak announced. "Use that time to consider what you have just witnessed. And remember, in real combat, the enemy will not fight fair, will not use familiar techniques, and will not give you the advantages you expect." As the crowd began to disperse and reform for the next match, word of what had happened started spreading. Beyond Training Hall 7, Academy staff members whispered to each other in corridors. Senior cadets paused their own training to discuss the impossible thing they had heard about. Within an hour, every being in the Academy would know about the Deathworld girl who had dropped an Etherean noble before the Instructor could blink, and the galaxy's understanding of humanity would never be the same. News traveled fast aboard a space station filled with young beings from across the galaxy. By dinner time, every cadet, instructor, and staff member had heard some version of what happened in Training Hall 7. The story grew with each telling, becoming more dramatic and impossible with every retelling. In the Crystal Beings section of the dining hall, a group of Vexari cadets discussed the match in their ringing, bell-like voices. "I heard the human girl defeated 3 Ethereans at once," one claimed, its diamond body sparkling with excitement. No, another corrected. "It was 5 Ethereans, and she did it blindfolded." "You are both wrong," a third chimed in. "My cousin's friend was there. It was just 1 Etherean, but she threw him so hard he went through the wall." At a table of furry, bear-like aliens, the debate was more heated. "Impossible," growled their leader, banging the table with one of his 6 massive fists. "Ethereans cannot be defeated by physical force. Their energy forms are too fast, too strong." "But dozens of witnesses saw it happen," protested a younger member of their group, including Instructor Vorthak himself. "Then there must be some trick, some Deathworld technology we do not know about." Similar conversations echoed throughout the massive dining hall. Some aliens were fascinated, others skeptical, and a few were genuinely frightened. The idea that humans, primitive Deathworlders with no natural advantages, could compete with advanced galactic species challenged everything they believed about the natural order. At the human table, Hana sat quietly eating her dinner while her fellow humans peppered her with questions. "How did you know that throw would work?" asked Park Minho for the 3rd time. "Etherean combat forms are completely different from anything on Earth." "I did not know it would work," Hana replied. "Honestly, I just saw an opportunity and took it. He was moving very fast in a straight line. In judo, we call that giving you his balance. Once someone gives you their balance, you can throw them." "But he is made of energy," Kim Doyen pointed out. "How do you throw energy?" "He had to solidify to attack me. Once he was solid, he followed the same physical laws as anyone else. Mass, momentum, leverage, these things work the same whether you are human, alien, or energy being." A shadow fell across their table. Hana looked up to see Nex Thuval standing there, his energy form dim but stable. The conversations at nearby tables stopped as aliens turned to stare. "May I sit?" he asked quietly. The humans exchanged glances. Park Minho nodded slowly. "Of course." Nex settled into a chair, his energy form adjusting to approximate sitting. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he turned to Hana. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I called you a savage and a primitive. I was wrong." Hana nodded. "Apology accepted. You fought bravely." "No," Nex said firmly. "I fought arrogantly. There is a difference. I assumed that because my species is older and more technologically advanced, I was automatically superior. That assumption nearly cost me my dignity and definitely cost me the match." He paused, his energy form flickering thoughtfully. "I have been thinking about what you said, about learning to fight, because your world is dangerous. Ethereans evolved on a peaceful world with low gravity and abundant resources. We developed technology to solve our problems, not physical skills." "Different worlds teach different lessons," Hana agreed. "Yes, but some lessons are more practical than others." Nex's voice carried a note of admiration that surprised the listening aliens. "Your world taught you to be ready for anything. Mine taught me to expect advantages I might not always have." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance to the dining hall. A group of senior cadets had entered, fourth-year students who would graduate soon and become officers in the galactic military. They were older, more experienced, and commanded respect from the younger students. Their leader was a massive alien that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a spider, with thick armor plating and 8 legs. His name was Corex Valdoon, and he was known throughout the academy as one of the most skilled fighters of his generation. "Where is she?" Corex demanded, his voice booming across the dining hall. "Where is the human who thinks she can embarrass the Etherean Empire?" Silence fell over the room. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the human table, where Hana slowly stood up. "I am here," she said calmly. Corex stomped over to their table, his 8 legs making the floor shake with each step. He towered over Hana, who barely came up to his lowest shoulder. His armor plating gleamed under the lights, and his multiple eyes focused on her with obvious hostility. "You got lucky today, Deathworlder," he snarled. "Nex is young and inexperienced, but I am not. I challenge you to a real fight, not some practice match with safety rules." Gasps echoed through the dining hall. Real fights at the academy were rare and dangerous. They required special permission and medical staff standing by. Sometimes cadets were seriously injured or killed. "I do not want to fight you," Hana said quietly. "We are all here to learn, not to hurt each other." "Coward," Corex spat. "Typical Deathworlder. All reputation and no substance." Nex stood up. Suddenly, his energy form blazing brighter. "Enough, Corex. She defeated me fairly in combat. Show some respect." "Respect?" Corex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "For a primitive? I think not. My species has been part of the coalition for 2,000 years. We have earned our place through strength and honor. These humans are newcomers who got lucky in their first war." "We earned our place the same way any species does," Park Minho said, standing up beside Hana. "By proving we could survive." "Survival is not the same as strength," Corex retorted, "and I will prove it." He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Hana. "The challenge stands, human. When you are ready to face a real warrior instead of playing games with children, you know where to find me." As he stomped away with his followers, the dining hall slowly returned to its normal noise level. But the conversations had changed. Now aliens were discussing not just what had happened in Training Hall 7, but what might happen if Hana actually accepted Corex's challenge. "You do not have to fight him," Nex said urgently. "Corex is dangerous. He has killed opponents before." "I know," Hana replied. She was still standing, watching Corex's retreating form. "But he is right about one thing. Humans are newcomers here. If I back down now, it will confirm what many aliens already believe, that we do not belong. Better alive and doubted than dead and proven wrong," Kim Doyen pointed out. Hana smiled sadly. "My grandfather used to say that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite your fear because something more important is at stake." "What could be more important than your life?" Park Minho asked. Hana looked around the dining hall, taking in the hundreds of alien faces that were still watching her. Some showed curiosity, others concern, and a few showed the kind of respect that had to be earned rather than given. "For future," she said simply. "Not just mine, but humanity's place in the galaxy. Whether we will be seen as equals or as pets to be tolerated." She sat back down and returned to her dinner, but her mind was already working through the problem Corex had presented. He was bigger, stronger, more experienced, and had natural armor that would protect him from most attacks. But as her instructors in Soul had always taught her, every opponent had weaknesses. She just had to find them. The question was whether she would live long enough to exploit them. The next 3 days at the academy were unlike anything anyone could remember. The story of Hana's victory over Nex had spread far beyond the cadet population. Senior instructors discussed it in faculty meetings. Academy administrators sent reports to their home governments. Even the Academy commander, an ancient being whose species predated most galactic civilizations, had requested a full recording of the match. For Hana, those days were both the best and worst of her Academy experience so far. The best part was how other humans looked at her now. Before the match, they had been 50 scared young people from a backward planet, trying not to embarrass their species. Now they walked taller, spoke louder, and faced alien challenges with new confidence. "Did you see the way that Vexari stepped aside when I walked past?" Kim Doyen said excitedly as they headed to their morning classes. "3 days ago, he would not even acknowledge I existed." "The tree people asked me about human martial arts yesterday," Park Minho added. "They want to know if we could teach them some techniques." But the attention was not all positive. Many alien cadets now saw Hana as a threat to their understanding of how the galaxy worked. If humans could defeat Etherians in combat, what other assumptions might be wrong? Some species had based their entire identity on being superior to primitive races. The worst part was the constant challenges. Every day, alien cadets approached her with demands for matches, tests of strength, or competitions in various skills. Some were genuinely curious about human abilities. Others were looking to restore their species' reputation by defeating the famous Deathworlder. Most of these challenges she declined politely, but a few were harder to avoid. On the second day, a group of the furry, bear-like Groth cornered her after combat class. Their leader, a massive creature named Breck Ironhide, blocked her path with all 6 of his arms crossed. "Human," he growled, in a voice like rolling thunder. "My people are known throughout the galaxy as the finest wrestlers. We cannot allow your victory over the energy being to go unanswered." Hana sighed. She had been expecting this. The Growth were proud of their strength and their wrestling traditions. Her victory over Nex had implied that technique could overcome power, which challenged everything they believed about combat. "I do not wish to fight you," she said carefully. "But if you insist, I will accept your challenge." The match took place. That evening, in a smaller training hall, with about 50 cadets watching, Breck was 3 times Hana's weight and covered in thick fur that would protect him from most striking techniques. His 6 arms gave him a huge advantage in grappling, and his species' natural strength was legendary. The match lasted less than 30 seconds. Hana waited for Breck to charge, then used his momentum to execute a perfect Tomo Nage, a sacrifice throw that sent the massive alien flying over her head to crash into the mat behind her. The impact shook the entire room and left Breck stunned and gasping. Word of her second victory spread even faster than the first. By the 3rd day, Instructor Vorthak had called Hana to his office. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a chair that had been adjusted for human proportions. His scaled face was unreadable as he studied her with those yellow eyes. "You are causing problems," he said finally. "Sir, I have not started any fights," Hana replied carefully. "I have only defended myself when challenged." "I know. That is precisely the problem." Vorthak leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his massive weight. "Do you understand what you have done?" Hana frowned. "I won 2 sparring matches." "No. You have shattered the fundamental assumptions that galactic society is built on." The instructor's voice was serious, almost grim. "For 10,000 years, species have been ranked by their natural advantages: physical strength, mental abilities, technological development. These things determined status in the coalition." He gestured to a wall display that showed the Academy's emblem. Dozens of different alien symbols arranged in a complex pattern that represented unity through diversity. Humans were placed near the bottom of that ranking, Vorthak continued. Deathworlders with no significant advantages, useful mainly as shock troops and manual laborers. Your victories suggest that this ranking might be incorrect. Is that bad? Hana asked. Vorthak's laugh was a low rumble that vibrated through his chest. Bad. Child, you have no idea what forces you have set in motion. Already, some species are demanding that humans be reclassified as a potential threat. Others want to study your combat techniques. A few are even questioning whether their own military doctrines need to be updated. He stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the Academy's training facilities. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species were practicing combat, tactics, and leadership skills. There is something else, he said without turning around. Corex Valdoon has formally submitted a challenge request to the Academy administration. He wants to fight you in a full-contact match with minimal safety restrictions. Hana's stomach dropped. She had been hoping that Corex would forget about his dinner hall threat, or that cooler heads would prevail. What happens if I refuse? She asked. Nothing official, but word would spread that you were afraid to face a real challenge. Humans would be seen as lucky novices who cannot handle serious combat. Your species would lose much of the respect you have gained. And if I accept? Vorthak turned to face her, his expression grave. Corex has killed 3 opponents in sanctioned duels. He is skilled, experienced, and absolutely ruthless. His species' natural armor makes him nearly invulnerable to most attacks, and his strength is sufficient to crush a human skull with one hand. The office fell silent except for the hum of the space station's life support systems. Hana stared out the window at the training facilities, watching young beings from across the galaxy learn to become warriors and leaders. What would you do? She asked finally. I am not human, Vorthak replied. I cannot answer that question for you, but I will tell you this. In my 30 years as an instructor, I have learned that sometimes the greatest victories come from knowing when not to fight. Hana nodded slowly. And sometimes the greatest defeats come from avoiding necessary battles. Wise words. Where did you learn them? My grandfather. He fought in Earth's last global war before we joined the galactic community. He used to say that some fights choose you, whether you want them or not. Vorthak studied her face carefully. And do you believe this is one of those fights? Hana thought about the past 3 days. The way other humans now carried themselves with pride instead of fear. The grudging respect she had seen in some alien eyes. The hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity could be more than the galaxy expected. She also thought about Corex, his obvious skill, his deadly reputation, and the very real possibility that accepting his challenge would be the last decision she ever made. Yes, she said quietly. I think it is. Vorthak nodded slowly. Then I will approve the match. But first you will train with me for the next week. If you are going to represent your species in mortal combat, you had better be prepared for what you will face. As Hana left his office, her mind was already racing through the implications of what she had just agreed to. In 7 days, she would face the most dangerous opponent of her life in front of the entire Academy. Win or lose, nothing would ever be the same. The week of training with Instructor Vorthak was the most intense of Hana's life. Every morning at dawn, she met him in a private training hall where he put her through exercises designed to test the limits of human endurance and adaptability. Your opponent's greatest weakness, Vorthak explained on the first day, is his confidence. Corex has never faced a human in serious combat. He will expect you to fight like every other species he has defeated, with strength against strength, speed against speed. The instructor demonstrated Corex's fighting style using Academy training recordings. The huge, 8-legged alien was devastatingly effective, using his natural armor to absorb attacks while striking back with crushing force. His multiple legs gave him perfect balance and mobility, making him nearly impossible to knock down. Traditional. Galactic combat theory says you cannot win, Vorthak continued. You are smaller, weaker, and lack natural armor. But traditional theory did not account for Deathworld adaptations. For 7 days, they worked on techniques that would exploit the differences between human and galactic fighting philosophies. Hana learned to use Corex's size against him, to attack joints between armor plates, and to move in ways that his 8-legged physiology could not easily track. But more importantly, Vorthak taught her about the psychological aspects of combat. Fear, he said, is the most powerful weapon in any fight. Not your fear, that you must control, but your opponent's fear. Corex has never been truly challenged by someone he expected to defeat easily. When you prove that his assumptions are wrong, his confidence will crack. The training was brutal. Vorthak used mechanical devices and holograms to simulate Corex's attacks, forcing Hana to practice dodging, blocking, and countering until her movements became automatic. By the end of each day, she could barely walk back to her quarters, but she was learning things that no human had ever known about galactic combat. Word of the upcoming match spread throughout the Academy and beyond. Representatives from dozens of species requested permission to observe. Military analysts from various governments sent observers to study the techniques that would be displayed. Some Academy alumni even returned to witness what many were calling the most significant combat match in the institution's history. The night before the fight, Hana sat in her quarters reviewing everything she had learned. Her human friends had offered encouragement and support, but she could see the worry in their eyes. Even Nex had visited, his energy form dim with concern. "You do not have to do this," he had said. "Your honor is already established." But Hana knew that was not true. Honor was not something you earned once and kept forever. It had to be defended, proven again and again. And sometimes, as her grandfather had taught her, you had to risk everything to protect what mattered most. The match was scheduled for midday, in the Academy's largest training hall. When Hana arrived, she found nearly 1,000 beings packed into the viewing areas. The noise was incredible. Dozens of species talking, arguing, and placing bets in languages from across the galaxy. Corex was already on the mat, stretching his 8 legs and flexing his armored shoulders. He looked even more massive than she, remembered, and his confidence was visible in every movement. To him, this was a formality, a chance to put an upstart human in her place and restore the natural order. Instructor Vorthak stood in the center of the mat, his scaled face showing no emotion. Around the edges of the fighting area, medical teams from multiple species waited with emergency equipment. The Academy's top healers were present, along with technology capable of treating injuries that would be fatal to most beings. "This is a formal combat challenge," Vorthak announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Standard dueling rules apply. The match continues until one participant yields, is incapacitated, or is killed. Medical intervention is permitted only after the match concludes." A hush fell over the crowd. Those were serious rules, more dangerous than the practice matches that cadets usually fought. Hana walked to her starting position, trying to keep her breathing steady. She could feel the weight of 1,000 stares, the expectations of her entire species resting on her shoulders. In the human section, she saw Kim Doyen and Park Minho watching with barely controlled fear. Corex stomped to his position, the floor shaking under his weight. His multiple eyes focused on her with predatory intensity. "Ready to learn your place, Deathworlder?" he growled. "Ready to learn something new?" Hana replied calmly. Vorthak raised his hand. "Begin." Corex charged immediately, all 8 legs driving. Him forward with terrifying speed, his armored fists swung in devastating arcs that would have crushed any normal opponent. He expected Hana to dodge backward, to try to stay out of range of his superior reach and strength. Instead, she did something that no galactic fighter would ever consider. She charged straight at him. The collision looked suicidal. Corex outweighed her by hundreds of pounds, and his armor could stop most weapons. But Hana was not trying to overpower him. She was using every technique Vorthak had taught her, every principle her human instructors had drilled into her. She slipped between his reaching arms like water flowing around rocks. Her hands found the joints in his armor, places where flexibility required gaps in protection. Her attacks were not designed to cause damage, but to disrupt his balance and timing. For the first time in his combat career, Corex found himself fighting an opponent who seemed to ignore all the rules of engagement. Hana moved in ways his eight-legged physiology could not easily track, attacking from angles his armor was not designed to protect. The match became a deadly dance. Corex's massive strength created craters in the mat where his fists landed, but Hana was never where he expected her to be. His confidence began to crack as she systematically demonstrated that all his natural advantages meant nothing if he could not hit her. The turning point came when Corex, frustrated and off balance, made the same mistake that Nex had made weeks earlier. He committed too much to a single devastating attack, leaving himself vulnerable for just a moment. Hana's response was not the simple throw she had used against Nex. This was something far more complex, a combination of techniques that used Corex's own momentum and mass to devastating effect. The throw that followed would be studied and discussed for decades. Hana managed to leverage Corex's enormous weight against him, sending all 8 of his legs into the air simultaneously before driving him into the mat with enough force to crack the reinforced flooring. The impact was so tremendous that the entire hall shook. Corex's armor rang like a bell, and his multiple eyes rolled back as consciousness left him. In the stunned silence that followed, Hana stood over her fallen opponent and offered the same respectful bow she had given Nex. Then she knelt beside Corex to check his breathing and pulse, her medical training taking over despite her exhaustion. The medical teams rushed onto the mat, but their scans showed that Corex would recover fully. His armor had protected him from serious injury, though his pride would take much longer to heal. As the crowd slowly realized what they had witnessed, a new sound began to build in the hall. It started with the humans, who erupted in cheers of joy and pride. But it quickly spread to other species as the implications of Hana's victory became clear. This was not just one human defeating one alien. This was proof that the galaxy's understanding of strength, skill, and potential needed to be completely reconsidered. In the days that followed, the Academy implemented sweeping changes to its training programs. All cadets would now study human martial arts alongside traditional galactic combat techniques. Cross-species training became mandatory, with emphasis on learning from different evolutionary backgrounds rather than relying on species advantages. Hana found herself appointed as the youngest assistant instructor in Academy history, tasked with developing new curricula that incorporated Deathworld combat philosophies. Her classes became some of the most popular on the station, attracting cadets who wanted to understand how technique and strategy could overcome raw power. Nex became one of her most dedicated students and eventually one of her closest friends. Their partnership became a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when different species learned from each other rather than competing based on prejudice. Corex, after his recovery, surprised everyone by requesting private lessons with Hana. His defeat had shattered his worldview, but rather than becoming bitter, he used the experience to become a better warrior and leader. He would eventually graduate as one of the Academy's most respected cadets. The changes spread far beyond the Academy. Military doctrines across the galaxy were updated to account for human combat techniques. Diplomatic protocols were revised to reflect humanity's new status as a species to be respected rather than tolerated. But perhaps the most important change was in how humans saw themselves. No longer did they walk through galactic society with downcast eyes and apologetic attitudes. They had proven that their Deathworld origins were not a source of shame, but a unique strength that the galaxy needed. Years later, when new cadets arrived at the Academy, they would hear the story of the human girl who changed everything with a single throw. Some would think it was exaggerated, a legend that had grown in the telling, but the veterans would smile and set them straight.